States has officially moved the Gaza ceasefire into its second and most volatile phase. This step shifts the conflict from active warfare into a contested experiment in security engineering, political control, and post-war stabilization. This transition is not merely diplomatic housekeeping. It represents a decisive attempt to redesign Gaza's power structure, neutralize militant capabilities, and impose a new governing architecture under intense regional and international pressure. Phase 1 was about stopping the bleeding. Phase 2 is about controlling the future. At its core, the second phase introduces three pillars: demilitarization, technocratic governance, and reconstruction. Each of these pillars is fragile on its own. Together, they form a system where failure in one element threatens the collapse of the entire framework. The announcement came from Washington, signaling that the United States is prepared to push forward even without full consensus from its closest regional ally, Israel. That alone marks a strategic shift. Historically, ceasefire phases have stalled precisely at the moment when political and military interests diverge. This time, the U.S. is choosing momentum over unanimity. This is a massive shift in strategy. We are moving from kinetic strikes to political engineering. Which pillar do you think is the most likely point of failure? A. Demilitarization. B. Technocratic governance. Or C. International reconstruction. Vote in the comments right now. The new phase immediately exposes the fundamental contradiction of the Gaza equation. How do you dismantle a structure that still retains coercive power while simultaneously transferring authority to civilian hands? According to U.S. officials, demilitarization is non-negotiable. This does not simply mean fewer rockets. It means the systematic dismantling of tunnels, weapons caches, command nodes, and the logistical backbone that allows armed groups to regenerate. Heavy weaponry, including rocket launch systems and anti-armor assets, must be removed from any operational context. Effective demilitarization requires deep penetration inspections and intelligence dominance to locate subterranean caches, a task that historically necessitates boots on the ground rather than remote verification methods. But here lies the operational paradox. Demilitarization requires enforcement, and enforcement requires security forces willing to operate inside Gaza. That responsibility is nominally assigned to a proposed international stabilization force. Its mission would be to support local Palestinian police units while allowing forces to gradually withdraw from occupied sectors. On paper, this resembles past multinational security deployments. In practice, it faces a familiar obstacle. Few countries are eager to place troops in a territory where legitimacy, command authority, and rules of engagement remain unclear. Wait. We are receiving updates on the diplomatic channels. Sources suggest that key Arab states are hesitating to commit personnel to the stabilization force without a guaranteed pathway to Palestinian statehood, a condition Israel currently rejects. This creates a vacuum in the security plan before it even begins. Without sufficient international participation, the stabilization force risks becoming a symbolic presence rather than a functional security mechanism. Meanwhile, Israel has made its position clear. The transition to Phase 2 is premature. From Jerusalem's perspective, Hamas has not met its obligations, particularly regarding disarmament and the return of the remains of a deceased hostage still believed to be held inside Gaza. In response, Israel has refused to open the Rafah crossing, a strategic choke point between Gaza and Egypt. This move serves both as leverage and as a signal. Cooperation is conditional, not automatic. Domestically, Israeli leadership is under intense pressure from hostage families and security officials alike. The argument is not abstract. It is deeply personal and politically charged. The idea that Israel should move forward while unresolved hostage cases remain is, for many, unacceptable. The Rafah crossing is critical to this phase. It sits on the Philadelphia corridor. Tactical quiz. What is the approximate length of the Philadelphia corridor along the Gaza-Egypt border? A. 7 kilometers. B. 14 kilometers. Or C. 21 kilometers. Keep watching. I'll reveal the strategic significance and the answer at the end. Behind closed doors, however, U.S. officials project cautious optimism. They acknowledge delays and obstacles, but insist communication channels remain active. Multiple potential recovery sites are reportedly under review, suggesting negotiations are ongoing rather than frozen. This dual messaging, public firmness paired with private flexibility, reflects Washington's broader strategic calculus. For the current U.S. administration, this ceasefire framework is not just a regional de-escalation tool, it is a flagship foreign policy achievement. Advancing to Phase 2 reinforces the narrative of decisive leadership and conflict management, even as the risks escalate. Yet the most consequential development may not be military at all. Simultaneous with the Phase 2 announcement was the formation of a Palestinian technocratic committee tasked with managing Gaza's daily governance. This body is designed as a temporary administrator, a non-partisan, non-militant structure intended to restore basic services, coordinate aid, and prepare the ground for longer-term political arrangements. Under the agreement, this committee would operate until a reformed Palestinian Authority could assume control. That prospect is where the plan collides head-on with Israeli red lines. The Technocratic Committee is the proposed solution to the governance vacuum. Do you believe a non-political committee can govern a war zone effectively? Comment Y for yes or N for no below. Israel categorically opposes the return of the Palestinian Authority to Gaza and rejects any framework that implies a pathway toward Palestinian statehood. From Israel's security perspective, replacing Hamas with the PA does not eliminate risk, it merely transforms it. Palestinian reactions, however, tell a different story. The Palestinian Authority publicly welcomed the transition, praising international efforts to stabilize the ceasefire and initiate reconstruction. Militant factions, including Hamas, also issued statements supporting continued implementation of the agreement. Hamas claimed it had already instructed its administrative body to transfer authority to the new committee. Skeptics note that administrative withdrawal does not equal loss of influence. Power in Gaza has never been solely in formal institutions. Experts caution against overestimating what technocratic governance can achieve. While such a body may humanitarian suffering and restore limited functionality, it cannot substitute for legitimate, accountable political leadership. Nor can it resolve the deeper questions of sovereignty, occupation, and long-term security. Technocratic governance in post-conflict zones often fails without a monopoly on violence. If militant factions retain concealed small arms and organizational cohesion, they can exert shadow influence over civilian administrators through coercion. Another layer of complexity lies in oversight. The Technocratic Committee is expected to operate under the supervision of a U.S.-led Board of Peace, a body whose composition remains largely undisclosed. Invitations have reportedly been sent to numerous countries, with selection reportedly handled at the highest political level in Washington. Israel, meanwhile, retains effective veto power over committee membership. Its internal security services have reviewed and approved the list of proposed members, ensuring no affiliation with Hamas or the Palestinian Authority. This creates an unusual governance structure: Palestinian administrators operating under international oversight, subject to Israeli security approval, while attempting to govern a population deeply skeptical of all external authorities. We analyze the complex layers of military and political strategy that others miss. If you want deep dive geopolitical analysis, type military scope in the comments. From a military strategic perspective, the second phase represents a shift from kinetic dominance to control through systems, security systems, governance systems, and reconstruction systems. But systems are only as strong as their weakest node. If demilitarization stalls, Israel is unlikely to withdraw. If international forces fail to deploy, local policing may collapse. If governance lacks legitimacy, reconstruction will not stabilize society. Each failure cascades to the next. The ceasefire phase is therefore not a continuation of peace. It is a test of whether peace can be engineered under conditions of unresolved conflict. We are entering uncharted territory. Prediction time. Will Phase 2 hold for more than 90 days, or will we see a return to kinetic operations? Comment your prediction below. For now, the machinery is in motion. Whether it produces stability or another strategic deadlock will depend not on announcements, but on enforcement, compromise, and the limits of external control in a territory shaped by decades of war. Phase 2 has begun. Its outcome remains entirely uncertain. Earlier, I asked about the length of the Philadelphia corridor. The answer is B, 14 kilometers. This narrow strip of land along the border is the critical choke point for controlling smuggling and movement between Gaza and Egypt, making it the strategic pivot of Phase 2. The transition is active. The risks are high. Military scope will continue to monitor the deployment of stabilization forces and the political maneuvering in Washington and Jerusalem. Subscribe for the breakdown.